What's up guys, HeavyTek here for another video that we're gonna do today. We're going to, of course, build something, but there's a little more to it to why we're going to build something today. So to give you guys a little preface of what's going on is, if you've seen some older videos on the channel, you notice that I had an editing rig that I put together sometime early last year, I think, 2017, 2018-ish. And it was in an NCXT H700i. It had a X399 platform with a Threadripper 1900X, which is real big, real kind of like over the top. But the problem is I never really used the computer that much, other than to edit and to do some like simple like work tasks, like maybe like doing some bills, writing scripts, printing out things, just some general home office use. So it really wasn't turned on most of the time, and it's just kind of big and sitting there. And where I have my two towers, I have my gaming tower that I use probably about like 90% of the time. Then I have the editing rig right next to it, just so I can, you know, share the monitors that are on the desk behind me and kind of like consolidate my work area. So the issue that I'm running into is I just don't have a whole lot of space. So I did my editing rig update, and you guys can go ahead and check out the video right here, where I downgraded from the Ryzen Threadripper platform to the regular AMD AM4 platform. So to save myself even more space, I decided that I was gonna go ATX. Now, I've been really interested in ATX lately because I just think the form factor is pretty cool. You know, you try to shove as many features on the smallest footprint as humanly possible. Some of the cases are kind of lagging to me in design because I don't know, aesthetics are important to me, and they're kind of like bland. So the cases that are like that look really good for ITX purposes are really expensive, and I didn't want to spend like, you know, $150 to $200 on a case. You know, I just wanted a smaller case that kind of looked nice. So for starters, we're gonna go ahead and use the 2700X. I would have used the 3000 series processor, but the 3900X is in my test bench, so I'm kind of like holding out to either the 3950X, which would be great for an editing rig, or I'll go ahead and maybe put like a 3800X, since the 8-core 16-thread processor does just fine. It's pretty optimized so far in the last build that I was using. They didn't have any hiccups, and the editing times weren't that much longer when I was using the 1920X. Next, we got a little fan hub. So this is gonna be like a little fan controller. If you don't know about ITX, they're notorious for not having a whole lot of fan headers on the motherboard itself. So if you're going to do ITX, I highly suggest that you invest in a fan hub if the case that you're using doesn't have a fan controller on it already. So if you're gonna hook up maybe more than 1 or 2 fans, you're gonna need something like this to ensure that all the fans are working in the case. Now, something that is fairly new is G-Skill's Trident Z Neo. Now, this RAM is specifically for 3000 series processors from AMD. And of course, you know, we have a 2000 series processor, which is not gonna be bad, but this kit is specifically built for AMD. Well, at least that's what it says on the box. So since we're using ITX, I wanted to keep the same amount of RAM that I had in the last build, which is 32 gigabytes. So this is a 2-DIMM kit of 16 gigabytes each, so it equals 32 gigabytes of RAM. And of course, it's the Trident Z RGB Neo, like I said before. So we're gonna try this out and see how good this is. For power supply, what's cool about the case that we're using, even though it's kind of a smaller form factor, we're gonna be able to use a full-size power supply, full ATX power supply. It's gonna be EVGA 650G+. It's fully modular. It's a champ, never had any problems, never let me down. This will do just fine. If you feel like you need more juice for what you guys are using, feel free to go ahead and you know, upgrade your power supply if you're gonna follow along and maybe build something similar, but maybe want a little more juice if you're gonna run multiple graphics cards. The coolest CPU, we're going to use an Intermax Aquafusion. This is the HeavyTek 240. I've been actually eyeing this kit for a very long time, but I really liked like the huge cooler. I don't know if it's an HeavyTek cooler or not, but I like how it's like pretty square and how it looks on motherboards. I think it looks real neat. It's also RGB, and the shape of the fans. So the fans, you know, of course, are circular, but like the housing is kind of square. So I thought that was really, really unique, and this will be something good to keep adequate temperatures for the CPU. Even though we're using a 2700X, like I said before, I'm going to upgrade to a 3000 series CPU. So having an AIO inside the build will definitely save me a headache later when I'm just trying to keep the most consistent temperatures in the build. So far, the main attraction, we're going to be using the new X570 platform. And of course, I could have used X470 just fine. I definitely want to take advantage of the full feature of the new chipset. Like with PCI 4.0, I'm most likely going to upgrade to all NVMe drives in this build that take advantage of the PCIe 4.0, and the processor and motherboard are definitely going to ensure that happens. For storage, I'm going to go recycle the drives that were already in my old editing rig. So I do have an MP510. This is 240 gigabytes from Corsair. No, my operating system isn't on this. It should be, but because of earlier reasons, this is just a storage drive for like my raw files and stuff when I download it from the camera. Then I do have like major storage, which I have this Crucial solid state drive. This is 500 gigabytes right here. I haven't even remotely filled this up. This is definitely a really good drive. I don't know the read and write speeds, but it's a CT500MX SSD. So of course, I always put the links to all the products in the description of the video, so you guys can, you know, if you want to like build it, you'll have a list of everything I'm using. And then I have an ADATA 120 gigabyte SSD. This is the SU800. This is what Windows is loaded on. So since it's still all AMD, I don't foresee any problems. I'm using the same processor, but I'm changing the chipset. So hopefully I can just put this in. AMD doesn't give me too many issues, and I can go on and load up the Windows. If not, I am prepared to reload Windows if I come across any hiccups. For the GPU, I haven't showcased this yet, but this is a Radeon RX 5700 XT. I got this a little while ago. This was originally on the test bench, but since I don't use the test benches that often, I'm just gonna share the RTX 2070 I have between both of them, and I'll use that as a GPU until I get more GPUs. But I think this will do great for the editing rig. It's a reference design because the case is smaller. Even though it's a good case for airflow, I think that the reference design, the blower will be able to excavate all that hot air outside the back of the case, and especially with the low clearance with the cases that we're using. Now onto the case, we are using a ATX case. Now you're like, Seon, you said you wanted small form factor, you got an ITX board, so why did you get an ATX case? The reason I chose this ATX format is specifically for when I upgrade the GPU in the future. Now, if you get an ITX case, or a lot of ITX cases, you know, they have strict requirements of how long the GPU can be and how thick the GPU can be. So you're not gonna be putting a 3-slot card or maybe a 2.5 slot card in some ITX cases. It's just not going to fit. And even though that the 5700 XT is a wonderful GPU, I wanted to leave myself some options that when I wanted to put something more powerful in it and it looked nice, and it might be like a 2.75 or a 3-slot card, it's not going to fit in that case. So since the Fractal Design, I'm using the Meshify C, well, the Meshify Mini C TG, it's a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be when it arrived. So it only allows for 5 expansion slots, which, you know, is 3 more than a standard ITX case. But like I said, it gives me that flexibility that if I wanted to use a GPU that's slightly bigger, I don't have to worry about it contacting the power supply. The inside of the case is perfect for water cooling and expansion and all those things. Another advantage to using this case is I can fit up a 240 millimeter radiator in the front. I think a 280 a 240 on top, and I think a 280 in the front. I'm not sure, but you can at least fit another 240 in the front. You can fit either 3 120 millimeter fans, or 2 140s, or 2 140s on top, or 2 120 millimeter fans on top. So I'm going to go ahead and place the AIO radiator on top, run 3 fans in the front, and of course you can put one 120 millimeter fan in the rear. Now this case comes with 2 fans, and the fans we're going to use are going to be the Arctic 120 millimeter PWM fans that were in Arctic Ryzen. That's why it's called Arctic Ryzen, because we are using Arctic products. And let me tell you, like, these fans are the reason I picked these fans look cool. They look really neat. The fan design is really sharp, and they are really quiet. Like, they can move a lot of air in the case, and they hardly make any noise. I have these in my HTPC, and I'll put a link to the video if you guys want to look at. And I can't even hear that thing when it's on. When I built the first Arctic Ryzen, it was really quiet too. So the only thing I probably would hear noise out of would be either the GPU, the Radeon GPU, or maybe the AIO. But I might pick up 2 more of these fans. But Arctic sadly doesn't make RGB fans. Arctic, make RGB fans. Like, you make some RGB fans, I'll throw them in a rig, and maybe I'll do an all white one and use them. But anyways, these fans are great. We're going to be using 3 in the front, 1 in the rear, so 4 total fans, and then the AIO 240 on top to expel all the hot air from the radiator through the top of the case. So there we go. That's all the parts. There's not going to be a real wrap up at the end saying performance, because the performance is essentially, what it is. We're just gonna do a quick build video and show you how it's like to put all this Frankenstein parts together, ITX motherboard, full ATX power supply, MATX case, and let you know, your options of when you're building a small form factor PC. Like I say, take your time. Definitely check the measurements on your parts. That way you're not running into issues. And if you like, smaller builds, I'm starting to get into them too. Hopefully we'll do a couple of more on the channel. So guys, sit back, enjoy the montage, and we'll see you on the next one.